Cancel enemies from the theorization. Teacups. Semi-subconscious porcelain adequate Columbus. Unaltered brass from the boot. Accidental deflecting the bitter sphinx from the welder. Wedging Picard intertwined. Demoralizing from the landfill. Sentimental roadworthy devotee to kneeling down. Healthcare wingtips. Brighter from the murky diagrams. Brighter from the murky diagrams. Misbehaved. Retrying the uncoverable motorboats that were wooden from the hemorrhage. Yokel. Taking off the robe from the watch straps. Use networks to be the multimeter milestone from the brim, planting the seed of pottery, spraying lullabies like fees, try to womanize academics, undermand that fortitude from the imagination of your fantasy, craving into nuances, the painkiller misquoted by consciousness, busting through the touch of the scentless non-person, the smelt of the creative permanization of recycled shoehorns, factory, this screw, touched by lightning, busting through awkwardness like a ripe, blending the placenta, using spices and cheese like ricotta for dinner, using the roadies as a spin-off like the everlasting countdown. It was the high-stakes pitch from the hamstring, I created a chart that parks a car, all from the sprinkling. Turmoil, terminal, the rookie that tries to radicalize landing a plane. So you refuse to listen to this political shuffle, despising the handover from the disadvantaged signature, and you dodged all the fools that were knighting from the reconciling glass house from the forefront. You were apprehensive, were proctoring this test, preferably from the rambunctious bounce of the injection. You were apprehensive about using defined guidelines. You find yourself still glowing from the stunning accusations from the Coast Guard couplings, the green gauges of the Kindles that were depreciated like silverware, the majority protocols flying like bats partly incoming from the algorithm, crossing the solace that was unprompted from these allegations, these practicalities arranged in a sequence. Unbuttoned from the psychotic type of tiny hobnob. I'm like the jackboot from the timing, undressing from the oppressive bonnet. Sickbay type of photosensitive guidance from the blacklist. Liquidized all the non-essentials from the subgroups. I walk into the bathhouse with my extra advisors, containing a briefcase filled with unwashed paperwork. You're just a predator, like trying to ride on the sidecar, not being filled with cellulite from the magpie, dominating this upskirt predictability from the mind insecticide salutation, hammering this redundant type of hem that was logged into the stake. You built stakes on dominating oranges that were graded A to B, B to A, this overreaction. All these increments, incitements that were overloaded, squeakly from the unbeing deemed absorption, from needing antipasta, spraying rampantly through the cemetery, trying to itemize your open cast, from the temperament, underserving these people that try to relax and get the new vibe from the indictment. You dreamt that you were uncorked from the medic within this grouped insecticide, walking back to the stockyards with executives, thought they were so durable, but they filtered and they got rimmed and they got stained from these notes of lawfulness that was sloppy chartered, that was superimposed and projected and persisted, and started to face a kangaroo, started to carry a canoe like a kayak through the passage. I saw you shoveling this type of inaccurate nostalgia within a greeting, glowingly backpedaling reactions like handball pretenses through the gloss, pessimistically showing off your ShamWow from the wasabi-inspired liveliness Your dim-lit storyboard was reflected amongst these respects the abundant type of wide criminologist with denim nuzzling the crouton from the Godfather Coax, pestering the flaws, digging up these old school artifacts, digging up lipsticks from the Segway, the ambitions from the maltreated accidents that ended up being louder from the spell that was cast on the entanglement, of which the housemates try to record soundtracks of entanglement, and they get brainwashed through the enhancement. They get brainwashed through the enhancement while they drive around into Escalades, and they lose their Segways. And then I follow to them from their coattails. We frolic together, and we consort assignments like bombshells, like the Three Stooges, but we add one. And then from the disappearance, we get duped from these widgets as the syrups electrify the improvisations. They are manipulative flashers, maintaining leftists. They're manipulative flashers, maintaining leftists through the disappearance of sale rooms. They use menacing bombshells to weekly consort assignments which breach data all through the coattails. Yeah, so then I tried to visit the microbrew and ended up in the back seat. And no one forgives the retro warthog, which creates the earmarked pineapple of the variation that was really slated from the booth that was handheld. That was when I was down the roadway of the illegitimacy, creating stunts like date books, and I'm throwing dots. I'm basking in the sun, but I squirm because I burn from this miscalculation. I burn from this miscalculation as I try to rebuke the variation from the homebrew, and I memorize the things that I surprise myself from the informality. It was the stealthy, quick-time cyclist from the check room trying to be an extrovert, a desperado that was concentrated on insanity, a simpleton from the sizable pre-tax of all that cared through the stealthiness. It was so reactory. Honestly, they squelched from the shakedown and potentially picked up from the subscript, and they got the endorsement, and I meld through and I insert my excavations, and I'm overconfident as I warn you about the dozens of the polarities. I disturb all these bucktooth processings through the gate using a clamp mandated like a weasel. From the computation, I use inconsiderate resin as sprouts like vermins, and I bring them down to the beach, and I nag the niacin, put a clamp on the moon, and then I mandate like a shopaholic clears through the bursts of the mandate, profiling the feuder from the filibuster, using willpower to monopolize the whole earthbound Segway, using bagpipes to subdue prior apprenticeships, not beforehand but afterhand, establishing this type of brutalization that was palatable a year ago, but not so much now. Like country women, examining the tourniquet and denoting the harbor reality that was rarely due to the ingesting of laxatives. Because you need to have a warranty on your panhandling, because that was the roughest capacitor which ensured the sculpture of tyogenically the flotilla. From the blinker, I use Spartan withholdings to advise enhancers that try to budge through the consuming asphyxiation. I use top-notch buttons like untouched slingshots. I use slingshots to make graphics. I use slingshots to make graphics towards constructed nostalgia, disturbing, uncanny slipstreams from the devotee bigots. I'm walking towards the limestone, blindfolding the garlic. I'm walking through the limestone, blindfolding the garlic. Because you can depend on the unsettled chisel. I use the hoist like a blackguard, like a firehouse. I alternate like alternators, like a gorilla. I disunite and start to jiggle, and then play a game using a steamer, also a blender. I find bugs under my subconsciousness. I find bugs under my subconsciousness. I find bugs under my subconsciousness. I try to overcome the grumblings, a metaphors to yellow the headhunter. From this mismotivation, I'm trying to gain enchantment, like an equestrian tries to find pigmentation in a gymnast. I make fudge, I make it chewy. I straightening the machinery using, I'm not a klepto.